protecting and increasing the red squirrel population throughout the glens. And it's not only extra winter feeding that the group tried to provide, it's extra habitat as well, which explains why Daniel McAfee and I are digging holes for Scots pine saplings on the steep banks of the Glenshesk River.
For every hazel rod we see there's going to be a tree planted.
There will be, and we haven't completed the hazel rods yet, but this is going to be a starting point, and over the next month we're going to get a few trees in.
So this is the weed pine that we're going to put in, and you've chosen these because you think these are going to be suitable for the squirrels?
They will be. Pines, red squirrels favour the pines, they do.
Right.
Grey squirrels, they favour more the smaller seeds like the oak and that. So we're mainly putting in pines to sort of direct it at the reds.
Do you have greys and reds here at the moment?
At present, we don't.
Right.
We have removed any greys that were
So you're culling the greys?
We do. We actively do grey squirrel control. And
you have to get rid of them because really they'll wipe out the reds eventually.
We do. They have a big impact on not only red squirrels but on other natural species that are here, songbirds.
Because they don't really belong here.
No, they're an invasive species.
All right. Well, will we make a start and get this one under the ground?
Yes.
Is there any particular choice?
No, you're the privilege of planting the first, so we'll
Am I allowed to choose my own site? I want a particularly soft, easily dug bit of ground.
No, that's not a problem.
All right. So I don't know. What about just this wee one here?
No, that's
right
fine.
beside us. All right. There we go. Well, hold on to that for the moment. Well, tell me this. What was it about squirrels that you in particular, I know there's a group of you now here.
There are.
I mean, they are completely natural to here.
They
there
are.
were always red squirrels
There
here.
has always been red squirrels in Northern Ireland.
But you were saying to me, you met a farmer recently.
Well,
he's lived here all his life.
He did,
And what was the crack again?
I was walking along the edge of his field next to the forestry that's just adjacent to his property, and he stopped me and he says, "What are you after?" And I says, "Well, I'm after red squirrels, just to look, to see what the population's like here." And he says, "Well, you're in the wrong country, son." I says, "Do you think so?" And he says, "Oh, I've been here since a boy," he says. And so
this was an elderly man.
This was a man, well, and his 80s, an elderly farmer.
Get away.
And I says, "Have you got 20 minutes?" He says, "I do." So he came into the field with me, we walked through the planting, we sat down where we had a couple of feeders, and within 10, 15 minutes we had 2 red squirrels came down the tree, feeding on the box.
And they were the first?
And he sat beside me, and I looked, and his mouth was open, and we sat for half an hour watching them, and I says, "Well, what do you think of that?" He says, "Did you bring these here?" And I says, "No, I did not, sir." So that was his
But
first.
isn't that extraordinary?
And he said there was no problems with me using his ground or coming up through his property to feed the squirrels.
He was charmed.
He was
with the
more
idea.
than glad to have me.
Anyway, is that deep enough?
That's
Maybe too deep, is it?
No, that's fine. We'll get her dropped in.
Of the hundreds of trees the Glen's Red Squirrel Group intended to plant on this bank, I can only lay claim to have planted 3 before Daniel and I trekked off to replenish some of their feeding boxes. Most of the pictures of squirrels that you've seen up to now have been captured on the little fixed cameras that the group has located at the feeding areas. But Daniel's experience and acute hearing as we quietly approached this stand of Scots pines ensured that I was able to see some squirrels with my own eyes. And I'm quite sure Daniel didn't bring them with him.
Hey, that was a real bonus, getting to see an actual... We didn't think it'd see one.
No, we didn't know. We were very lucky now.
Yeah.
So
How did you know? Because you heard the wee bird, first of all.
I did. I heard the birds, the cold tits would hang around the feeding area because they get any food that the squirrel would happen to throw out of the box. So
they see the squirrel, they get agitated, is that the idea?
Well, they're sort of wary of him, but they know there's food about and they're fairly active.
What would be the natural predators of your red squirrel, besides the damage that the grey can do to them?
We have pine marten here. Now, the pine marten will eat red and grey.
Right. You couldn't train them to eat only grey?
Well, I wish they would, but...
Do you think those boxes there need replenished then anyway? Okay, here we go.
And so it was on with the task of refilling the squirrel feeders, which, as you've seen, keep lots of other creatures happy as well. The birds, obviously, the grey squirrels, unfortunately, and also, it's wonderful to see, the pine marten, who, when he can't find a squirrel to eat, will just as readily eat the squirrel's dinner.
When it's raining, they climb into the box.
Is that right?
Stay out of the rain.
They use it for a wee shelter?
They will do.
Get away.
Animals aren't stupid.
That's for sure.
Yep.
They won't survive otherwise.
No. Stupidity is a human trait.
Well, squirrels know how to be squirrels, put it that way.
And just occasionally, squirrels know how to be human too. From the newest woodland in the country to the absolute oldest, when we come back. I doubt very much if I'll be around long enough to see the little Scots pines that I planted in Glenshesk grow into any kind of maturity. But the people who planted Breen oakwood further up the glen some 2,000 years ago may well be living there still, because fairies, I'm told, can live an awful long time. The oakwood at Breen is among the oldest, if not the oldest, in the entire country. And the person who's taken on the responsibility on behalf of the Northern Ireland Environment Agency of trying to ensure that it survives for the next 1,000 years is Tracy Platt. One of Tracy's most challenging tasks, I imagine, is persuading people that it really is as old as she claims.
We've had pollen studies done here at Breen, and we know that we've had oak trees here for over 2,000 years. The forest itself was cleared about 2,100 years ago, and again about 1,400 years ago. But it survived in the 17th century when so much of our oaks were lost in Ireland here for barrel making, ship making, tannin, all those purposes. Breen survived, and that's really what is unusual about Breen, is that it is a remnant of what would have been right down the glens here.
So it's truly, truly ancient woodland.
Truly ancient.
And it really hasn't changed all that much in all of that time at all.
It's actually not changed at all. They have also done genetic surveys of the acorns and the trees here, and Breen actually has its own genotype.
Seriously?
Yeah.
You mean these trees are unique to this area?
Yeah, probably because unfortunately it is a little puddle with no oaks really within the too close a vicinity to it, and now they're actually their own breed.
Right.
They are sessile oak. I mean, we can recognise them as a breed of oak. They're Quercus petrea, and but they also have their own genotype as well. So it makes it even more important, because
to preserve it.
Yeah, well, if these prove to be disease resistant and we lose everything else.
This is what an old or ancient oak woodland looks like. It's really constantly renewing itself. Is that the case?
It is constantly renewing itself, and really that's a sign of a healthy oak woodland, an ancient oak woodland. You want the mature trees, yes, but equal to that you need the saplings coming through. To allow saplings to come through, trees have to die, things have to fall. So you need the dead wood as much as you need the live wood.
But they're all growing kind of close together as well, and that's where we get all these wee gnarled twisted. But they're all fighting each other for the light.
Well, really, I mean, it's not planted by man, so it's not going to be a nice straight rows. It's not going to be to allow the girths to grow. Really, I mean, the planting here has probably been done by nature. Jays are hugely important in oak woodlands.
Is that right?
Yeah, jays.
Carrying the acorns?
Carrying and burying the acorns. They actually plant the acorns for us.
Right.
So this is where you get this really random distribution where you'll get some close together. You will occasionally get the veteran oaks that you're used to, that you get your arms around, give them a big hug, But you'll have the small spindly ones here as well. Any of the trees that are down, if you get a chance to look at the rings, they're really dense and close together.
So they grow. They grow slowly. In other words,
they grow very slowly.
And they don't get big.
They don't get the big girths.
Don't have the room to do that.
They don't.
In other words,
they don't.
And is it true that part of the reason why Breen oakwood has survived is because of the name? The name refers to, I believe, a fairy mound or a fairy palace.
It does, yes.
And people were superstitious about that.
Well, it's Ireland.
It's
Ireland we're in. Yes, certainly the theory is. I mean, throughout the glens here, you will find fairy trees. You will find standing stones that have no other meanings. And we have the fairy fort here.
So is the fairies to thank for a lot of it being left alone for so many years?
We do.
Breenwood survives then, courtesy of the fairies and of Tracy and her colleagues, at the southern end of Glenshesk, where the branches twist and turn as they jostle for space on the crowded slopes. Away at the northernmost tip of the glen, however, within sight of the sea, these upright fellows have been allowed to take full advantage of the wide open spaces of the Maharan Temple meadows, overlooked by a house that is unlike any that you've seen further up the glen. It's almost as if two quite separate buildings have been brought together to form one house. And in a strange way, I find that reminiscent of one of the major personalities associated with this house. You've already heard mention of a number of surnames that have strong associations with the Glens of Antrim. Names like McQuillan, MacDonald, Macaulay, and of course McCahan. But there's another surname that demands to be mentioned, particularly in relation to Glenshesk, and that is the name of Casement. Nearly 100 years after his execution for treason by the British government, Roger Casement remains a controversial figure whose reputation is still in dispute. Depending on your political viewpoint or your interpretation of history, he was either a traitor who got his just rewards for collaborating with the Germans against his own country during the First World War, or he was an Irish patriot who paid the ultimate price for his beliefs. What is not in dispute, however, and what must be to his eternal credit, is the role that he played as a British consul in Africa in bringing to an end the diabolical regime of the Belgian King Leopold II in the Congo Free State in the early 1900s, when whole villages of native people were forced into the harvesting of rubber and were rewarded with systematic enslavement, mutilation, torture and murder. Casement exposed these abuses by spending several weeks travelling throughout the Congo, interviewing workers, overseers and mercenaries, and then publishing his findings, against great opposition as you might imagine, in his report of 1904. Some 6 years later, he did a similar job in the Amazon basin, helping to expose the atrocious treatment of the native Indians by the Peruvian Amazon Company, details of which make for harrowing reading. So a complex and controversial figure he remains. But I couldn't really visit Glenshesk without mentioning his name, because this is where he spent a considerable portion of his formative years. Here in Maharan Temple House, home nowadays of Patrick Casement and his family. By the age of 13, Roger Casement had lost both his parents, and Patrick's great-great-grandfather was one of the relatives who looked after him while he attended school at Ballymena nearby. He returned here to Maharan Temple quite frequently as an adult, and in fact, it was in this house that he penned his report in the Congo in 1904. Patrick Casement is well used to answering questions about his renowned forebear, but on this occasion, somewhat to his relief I suspect, I'm more interested in his own role in what is called the Heart of the Glens Landscape Partnership Scheme. Patrick is a landowner here in Glenshesk and would have the usual landowner's concerns about the safekeeping of his property. But he's also an ecologist and a keen conservationist who's anxious to provide access to people who share his interest in the natural and man-made heritage of the Glens. We're visiting an example of that heritage right now on his land in the shape of the ancient gable of Culfetram Church, which is showing remarkable resistance to the gales from which Patrick and I are sheltering in its lee.
This is older than Bonamargee.
This is, yes, this is late 1400s, late 15th century.
Do we know anything about its history at all?
Very little, except that this is on the site of a much older church.
Right.
And there was a monastic site here, a circular enclosure which is shown by a crop mark that was detected from the air in a dry summer in the 1980s.
Right.
And there was a monastery here with a whole range of associated buildings.
This was a busy place.
This was a busy place.
It's strange now because it's in the middle of this big empty fields, isn't it? And it's standing, it looks strange standing on its own,
Yeah.
really.
I mean, it's a very atmospheric place, actually. And I mean, because it's got a great view out over to the sea, to Rathlin, you can see.
On
just
good
behind
days.
it. Well, even today you can now
today,
see it.
yeah.
And a wonderful view up the glen. And it sort of gives you a whole sense of being at the entrance to Glenshesk here.
Well, now your house, we've just come down from your house, as I say, it's about 2 fields away. It feels more like 2 miles away. But, and the name of the house is Maharan Temple.
That's correct.
Which
yes.
suggests that it was a reference to this church here. The temple was this church.
The church. That's right.
And
yes.
so what the plain of the temple or something
Yes,
like that?
or in fact, yeah. I mean, the modern townland is now called Church Field, which is more or less a direct translation of Maharan Temple.
Living in Glenshesk, in proximity to this, with this beautiful view and all the rest of it, it's hardly surprising that you developed this great interest that you have in conservation and in landscape conservation.
Very much so, yes.
It's a landscape partnership scheme. Explain a wee bit about that.
Well, I mean, this is funded by the Heritage Lottery Fund. It's a method of trying to conserve some of these things that we all value so highly, both the scenery, but also the cultural history of the glens, and I think it's a way of trying to pull together partnerships and schemes to do that, involving local people in looking after their own precious environment.
This glen in particular, it doesn't seem to attract the same amount of tourism, for example, as some of the other more promoted glens.